What's up guys, welcome back to more Reddit stories about entitled people, crazy people, and everything in between. As usual, we got some more Reddit posts to check out today, so be sure to subscribe if you're new here and let's begin. Am I the a-hole for not following an autistic ritual resulting in property being damaged? I'll keep it short. Friend has an autistic son. I've met him before. Lovely lad. He's 6. I've never spent prolonged time with him, just short-hour visits to my home or at the park. They invited me to dinner the other night, and I went. Their son has a ritual that he has to do at dinner, where he takes a bite of his food, then exchanges his fork with someone else. Their whole family follows this routine. He takes a bite, swaps fork with mom, takes a bite, swaps fork with dad, and so on, all around the table. They allege it's the only way he'll eat. Well, I refused, and it resulted in a huge tantrum, which unfortunately resulted in thrown plates and other dinnerware. Some of it is broken. I'm being blamed for not doing this, let's be honest, disgusting ritual. Even if it's the only way he'll eat, they should have warned me beforehand and I would have politely declined the invitation. Was I the a-hole? No, P, definitely not. They really should have explained that to you beforehand. But instead they said nothing until you were already over there for dinner and just expect you to be okay with it. It's totally the parents' fault that this whole thing happened. If participating in this weird ritual is kind of a requirement to be able to eat with the family, then they need to warn people beforehand. Because I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't be okay with it. Understandably. Especially when you consider it's not even just 2 people trading forks. If the son trades forks with one person and then trades that fork with another person, all the forks are getting passed around the table and everyone's getting a turn with every fork. That is kinda gross, isn't it? So yeah, I don't blame OP at all for refusing to do that. How a polar bear got the colonel arrested. As you may know, hunting and fishing is very big in Alaska. I don't hunt and am a very occasional, as in a few times only, fisher. What's important to me and a very large portion of the hunting community is conservation efforts. I've always believed in consume what you take and strictly adhere to conservation policies, limit species, etc. Alaskan outdoorsmen are very knowledgeable of these rules and regulations, and with good reason. The Fish and Wildlife Service is always watching, and is very quick to levy huge fines and even imprisonment for outdoorsmen not following the strict policies. Outdoorsmen are also highly encouraged to report offending personnel in order to assist with compliance efforts. The story takes place about 15 years ago, so all people here have likely moved or retired. We had built a new center in Alaska for the Army. In the old center, there was a very large and imposing taxidermied display polar bear swiping at a seal. When I say large, I mean a polar bear that was at least 12 feet long. He was on all fours, in a display that was about 16 feet by 8 feet by 6 feet. It was a massive display of a polar bear that was taken prior to the ban in 1972, Marine Mammal Protection Act. The Army wanted this display in the new center, but since it was so large, we had to leave it in the old center until the very last days. I did routine inspections of the new center at least twice a year, where I would meet up with the head civilian. I loved my trips to Alaska because it was such a beautiful place. It should be noted that at the time, my big boss was at the Pentagon and his last name was very unique. Let's just call him Colonel Polar Bear. On one particular inspection, about 3 years after the new center had been built, I noted that some new policy was coming down from Colonel Polar Bear's office that would affect all of our installations. The civilian kind of grumbled and smirked, then said okay. I could sense that he was irritated, but I didn't know why. I found out later why from one of the motor pool technicians. The civilians here were guards/reservists who wore a uniform 1 weekend a month, and also were Alaskan residents who had been in the state for many years. The uniformed personnel in charge of the facility and units were active duty, and consisted of personnel from all around the country. The motor pool tech told me that prior to Colonel Polar Bear getting his lofty position, he was the active duty commander of the units here. He was not from Alaska and he was not liked at all. He was racist, sexist, and constantly berated all those lower ranking than him. In one particular instance, he yelled at a female non-commissioned officer who was having trouble doing push-ups. He shouted, "You know why you can't do them? It's because your tits are too effing big," in front of all the soldiers. So Colonel Polar Bear was actually the commander at the time when we were finished building and were transitioning to our new center. The old center had been earmarked for demolition, which could not proceed until the final piece was removed. That's right. The aforementioned polar bear display. Unfortunately, we had no place to put it due to the size. Well, thankfully, Colonel Polar Bear offered up his big house close by, where he could store it in the interim. He had the civilian workers carefully move it into an army truck, and then carefully roll it into his house. Well, there was just one issue. Not only could you not hunt or shoot a polar bear in Alaska since the very early 70s, you cannot display them in a private residence without a license. Colonel Polar Bear, not being from Alaska, apparently did not know this rule. After the truck and workers left the house, Fish and Wildlife officers arrived within hours to arrest Colonel Polar Bear. They placed him in handcuffs and walked him out of his house in view of all. This was thanks to an anonymous call. After all, Alaskan outdoorsmen have to follow the rules. After Colonel Polar Bear was released, he promptly called a mandatory meeting for all active and guard/reserve personnel to attend in formation and in uniform. As everyone stood at attention, red-faced Colonel Polar Bear yelled that he wanted to know immediately who had reported him to Fish and Wildlife. As the motor pool tech told me, you could hear a pin drop. This went on for about 10 minutes until everyone was excused. Eventually, the polar bear display was placed in the large entrance to the new center. Unfortunately, I can't find any pictures of it online. I never did find out who was the one that called Fish and Wildlife. Calling the cops when my boyfriend's sister left her children with me. This happened about a year ago. Me and my boyfriend have been together for 5 years. His sister, Claire, has a 1-year-old baby, Alex. Claire is a single mom and sometimes drops her baby off at our place when she has some errands to run. I'll be honest here, I have no clue how to take care of a baby. I play with the baby, but other than that, my boyfriend usually takes care of Alex. My boyfriend's work is on site, so he usually isn't home for 4 days and then comes home for 3 days. One day, Claire asked my boyfriend if she can drop Alex off for the day. My boyfriend was supposed to leave for work that evening. Since she had said that she will pick up the baby by evening, he didn't mention that. Big mistake. He left around 5 p.m. I was waiting for Claire and kept calling her. She picked up the phone around 8 p.m. and told me that she went to a place a few hours away with her friends. She told me to tell my boyfriend to take care of Alex for the next 3 to 4 days. I told her that my boyfriend already left for work. Then she just told me, "Then you take care of Alex. I'll be back in 4 days." And then she hung up on me and switched off her phone. I freaked out hard. I cannot call my boyfriend because he is unreachable on site. Neither of us have family in the state that we could have called. I called a few friends, but no one gave me anything helpful. The bag she gave with Alex only had diapers left in it. The baby was crying her head off, and I didn't even know what to feed her safely. I literally didn't know what else to do. So I called the police and told them what happened. They directed me to a social worker. While the social worker was helping me take care of the baby, the cops called the cops where she was to locate her. The cops found her high on marijuana, and she had enough on her for them to classify it as possession and intent to sell. Edit, I don't think she actually sold anything. She probably just brought enough for her and her friends for the next few days. She didn't get any jail time. She had to do community service and plead guilty. Unfortunately, that also meant she got a felony conviction. This got her fired, and she hasn't been able to hold on to a good job since. In my defense, I only wanted her to come back, because I didn't want anything to happen to Alex because I am not capable of taking care of her. I did not think she was doing anything that would get her arrested. In her defense, she has left Alex at her home plenty of times, so it's not unreasonable for her to think that I would have no problem taking care of Alex for a few days. Also, this was probably the first time she took a break for herself since Alex was born. My boyfriend was pissed in the beginning, but came around later. Their parents also think I wasn't in the wrong. She obviously hates me and thinks I ruined her life because she wanted a break for a few days. This got brought up recently at a family dinner, which is why I ask, am I the a-hole? Nope, I'd say not. Even after you told her that your boyfriend is away for work, she didn't actually get any confirmation from you. All she did was say, "Then you take care of the baby," before hanging up and turning off her phone. She didn't even give you a chance to respond or say if it was okay or not. Any responsible mother should know to keep their phone on when their baby is in the care of someone else. But it seems as if she intentionally did this to avoid giving you a chance to say no. And as you've already stated, you were not prepared at all for that responsibility. You didn't know what to do and didn't have any family to contact. You just made the judgment call that it was in the baby's best interest to call the cops, which I think was a pretty rational decision. Is my cousin on the hook for life because his cat got his neighbor's cat pregnant? My cousin's cat apparently got the neighbor's cat pregnant. She had a litter of cats and they proved his cat is the father. My cousin offered his neighbor the following. He'd pay for the vet bills related to the cat's pregnancy. He'd pay for the vet bills related to the kittens getting shots, etc. He'd pay the costs to get the kittens housed, the shelter costs, and whatnot. He fully owns the fact this was his fault and wanted to cover the costs of the situation. The neighbor made a really weird request, and I'm convinced it has no legal standing. The neighbor says to him, like verbatim, he sent me the screenshots of her message. No, the cats will not be rehoused. I decided I am keeping all of them. What you will do is be required to pay for half the food and half the vet care for these cats, since they're the result of your irresponsibility. It would be no different than if a person got a woman pregnant. You're on the hook for half the cost of these cats for life. She's basically trying to argue that because she is deciding that she wants to keep all of the cats for herself, that my cousin is on the hook for the lifelong care of these animals. I have never heard of such a thing, and when he originally told me what she said, I thought he was making a joke. Since she is electing to keep the cats for herself and cats are considered property, doesn't that mean she is accepting the costs and issues which arise from the fact she is taking possession of that property? And someone responds with, no, there is no such thing as feline child support. Someone also asked, are there DNA tests/paternity tests for cats, or did they just ask the cat to confirm that he sired these kittens? And someone responds with, I looked it up and apparently there are, and she might have even gotten one if she thinks it could force someone to pay for her to keep a whole litter of cats. But I highly doubt she actually went that far. And sure, OP said that she proved it, but based on what? Word of mouth? Or did she actually show them DNA results? But nonetheless, none of this even matters. There's no cat child support office that's going to come after them and start garnishing their paychecks. Anyway guys, that's all for today. Thank you for watching, I appreciate it. Be sure to like and subscribe for more Reddit stories, and I'll see you in the next one.